G'day guys, and welcome back for another brand new Oblivion Remastered build. Today I bring you the Spellknight. Hailing from High Rock, the Spellknight is a member of the Knight's Mentor, a knightly order dedicated to upholding and defending the Temple of Julianos. The Spellknight is tasked with upholding the virtues of knowledge and wisdom, as well as lending her strength to protect the institutions of learning all across Tamriel. With a strong grip on her blade and an insatiable thirst for knowledge, the Spellknight will delve deep into ancient dungeons and forgotten tombs in search of lost histories and powerful artifacts. Clad in a suit of glistening enchanted armor and cloaked with a myriad of defensive spells, the Spellknight will skillfully cut down any and all that get in the way of her holy mission. Her unparalleled magical prowess, combined with a skillful mastery of both armor and blade, allows the Spellknight to defend the virtues that she has sworn herself to, keeping evil at bay and protecting the peoples of Tamriel in her endless pursuit of enlightenment. Without further ado, let's get into the build. Timestamps can be found down in the description below to help you navigate to different parts of the build. Starting off with the Birthsign, you'll want to choose the Apprentice, which will give you a plus 100 points to Magicka, but with the drawback of an added 100% weakness to magic. Your natural breath and blood will reduce this to 50%, and the rest you can balance out with a mix of enchantments and spells, leaving you with a large pool of Magicka to begin with. For your class, you'll want to create a custom class and put magic as your specialization, with strength and willpower as your favorite attributes. Your major skills will be Alteration, Blade, Block, Conjuration, Heavy Armor, Mysticism, and Restoration. When creating your character, you'll want to choose the High Rock origin, and so at level 1 your stats will be 35 Strength, 50 Intelligence, 55 Willpower, 30 Agility, 40 Speed, 30 Endurance, 40 Personality, and 50 Luck. I've put leveling milestones on screen for every 5 levels, so you should know roughly what your stat allocation should look like. However, these can always be tweaked to your liking. Now for equipment. Starting with armor, your main look will be achieved with a full set of ebony armor minus the helmet, which you'll want to make sure to enchant. For the helmet, you'll want to grab the Aquasilk hood, which can be found on the top floor of the Anvil Mages Guild. Good options for enchantments are Spell Absorption or Resist Magic in order to counteract the Apprentice Birthsign, and these can be acquired via Sigil Stones. For your weapon, you'll be using a Claymore, going with the strongest one you can find for your level, making sure to enchant it so that it can be used against ghost-type enemies. For the roleplaying, you'll want to act knightly first and foremost. Having taken the solemn vows of knighthood, the Spellknight will always act with the utmost integrity, prepared to offer assistance wherever she is needed. You want to be courteous and kind in your dealings, acting with the dignity expected of a knight, and take it upon yourself to protect the innocent from evil. While the Spellknight will fight fiercely against any that would do harm, she has a special disdain for those that use the gifts of Julianos for evil, such as necromancers and rogue mages, and will take extra pleasure in punishing such wickedness. Where the Spellknight differs from other knights is in her personality. The Spellknight cares little for socializing, preferring to spend her spare moments reading or learning new techniques. You'll want to avoid wasting time haggling or charming others as much as possible, as that effort is better spent looking for and uncovering undiscovered knowledge. You'll also want to go out of your way to collect and store any unique and powerful magical artifacts that you come across, storing them in one of your player homes for safekeeping. Speaking of player homes, both Battlehorn Castle and Frostcrag Spire make great homes for this build, as both tap into different aspects of the Spellknight's character. Battlehorn Castle is perfect for a knight such as herself, where she is able to safely store any magical items that she recovers, as well as where she can command her personal knights in upholding the tenets of Julianos. Conveniently, Battlehorn also contains an altar to Julianos just right of the entrance, which helps add to the roleplaying. Frostcrag in turn acts as the perfect place for the Spellknight to perform her research, isolated from distractions and brimming with magical possibilities, making it a great backup base and spot from which to launch expeditions into the surrounding areas. The primary faction for this build will of course be the Mages Guild, an organization of learning that the Spellknight will fit right into. The Mages Guild offers her ample opportunities to grow her own magical knowledge, as well as to fight against those that would abuse the gifts of magic, and so the Spellknight will find herself joining as soon as possible and advancing through the ranks. The other major faction to join will be the Knights of the Nine, as the Spell Knight's experience as a Knight's mentor makes her the perfect candidate to organize and lead the renewed order. The questline also offers you the opportunity to recover and protect the powerful artifacts known as the Relics of the Crusader, a task right up the Spell Knight's alley. You may also choose to join the Fighters Guild to take advantage of their trainers and to hone your combat skills, but you generally won't care for either gold nor glory. Being a Knight, you'll want to avoid groups like the Thieves Guild and Dark Brotherhood. When it comes to Daedric Princes, there are a few quests, such as Azura's, that you'll want to complete to collect their rewards, but you want to avoid ones that require you to commit crimes or otherwise harm innocents, such as Mephala. Now for the backstory. The Spell Knight was born into a well-respected family in the city of Dania in High Rock. Her family had a history of knighthood, having proudly served the local lord for over 4 generations. This meant that from a young age, the Spell Knight was trained to follow in her family's footsteps, receiving all forms of training in both combat and knighthood from her parents. While she enjoyed this, the Spell Knight quickly found that she had an interest in academics, often spending her spare time at the local library or in the Temple of Julianos, listening to the free lessons that they would give. The Temple of Julianos worked quite differently from most temples, serving as more of a school and home of academic pursuit rather than a typical church. It was at this time that the Spell Knight would discover her innate grasp of magic, and would manage to convince her parents to let her take some basic lessons. The older she got, the more she would turn towards the temple and away from wanting to be a knight. This culminated one day with the Spell Knight telling her parents that she wished to become an acolyte at the school rather than a knight. Though this greatly disappointed her parents, they eventually agreed that she had a right to decide her own fate, and the next day she became an official acolyte. She would spend her early adult life in the temple, learning all about the various schools of magic and their application. Her life would again take a turn, however, when one day the temple received word of an ancient ruin that had been rediscovered nearby. Though she was still relatively young, the Spell Knight begged the priests to let her come, not wanting to miss out on such an opportunity. When they arrived, they were met by a small group of knights, clad in shining armor etched with mystical runes. As was standard practice, the knights are here to serve as protectors for the priests, as they were members of the Knight's Mentor, the order of knights dedicated to Julianos. The Spell Knight couldn't help but be fascinated by them, spending almost as much time with the knights as she did exploring the ruins themselves, even sparring with the commander once or twice. By the last day, the commander was already offering her a place within their order. She had never considered it before, but in that moment she realized that this could be her destiny, a way to fuse her skills of a knight with her love of learning. The next day she would officially request to join the Knight's Mentor. The Spell Knight flew through her training, becoming a junior knight in under a year. After her knighting, the Spell Knight would spend years proudly serving amongst the ranks of the Knight's Mentor, furthering her studies and honing her swordcraft. Her unwavering conviction and devotion to the Order's mission, as well as her history of combat training, came in useful countless times over the years, and she was able to quickly rise to become a well-respected member of the organization. One mission, however, would take a turn for the worst. A small coven of witches had desecrated one of the temples of Julianos, making off with a special enchanted amulet. The Spell Knight was chosen to travel along with a few of her comrades to track them down, slay the witches, and recover the amulet. After days of following their trail, the party would find themselves ambushed within an abandoned village right as the sun began to set. Suddenly assailed from all sides by the witches and their summoned familiars, the Spell Knight rallied the knights and fought back. Quickly the witches were routed, and most slain, with only the coven leader escaping into the night. Though the battle was short, by its end many of her fellow knights were either slain or seriously wounded. Only one other than herself was even capable of standing on their own, and so the Spell Knight ordered that the survivors remain here to recover and wait for reinforcements, while she would continue the chase alone. The Spell Knight would finally catch up to the coven leader within a small village on the border of Hammerfell and Cyrodiil, where the two would engage in a fearsome battle. The witch sent volleys of spells at the Spell Knight, which would harmlessly reflect off of her own magical wards. Summoned minions tried in vain to slay her, but each would fall to the edge of her blade. After an exhausting battle, the witch lay dead, and the Spell Knight recovered from her the stolen amulet. Not long after the battle ended, a small cohort of Legion soldiers would show up, demanding the Spell Knight surrender. The Spell Knight explained her purpose for being there, but still laid down her weapons, being placed into Imperial custody. After all, she was quite a distance from High Rock and the usual areas of Knight's Mentor activity, so it made sense for the Legion to be suspicious of her story. The Imperial commander decided it would be best to take her to the Imperial city, where the situation could be resolved diplomatically. Upon arrival, she would be escorted into the Imperial prison for temporary holding. Knowing that it wouldn't take long for the Legion to investigate and for her guild to back up her story, the Spellknight planned to bide her time until the day of her release. That day wouldn't come, however, as after only a few days' time the Spellknight would be awoken to find the Blades, the Emperor himself close behind, trying to make their way through a hidden exit in the very cell that she now sat. From here, the Spellknight would of course become embroiled in the Oblivion crisis, choosing to remain in Cyrodiil for the time being in order to make use of her talents where they are needed the most. And with that, this character build comes to an end. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed watching this build as much as I enjoyed making it. If you have any other ideas for builds that you would like to see or other comments about my builds, feel free to leave a suggestion in the comments section of this video.
Sometimes I think he's watching me. Do you think what happened to Kvatch could happen here?